Welcome to Dad Sharpens Dad. I'm your host, Trey Brown. You could be anywhere else, but you are here, and hopefully something in this episode speaks to either you as a father or resonates, and it's something that you could share with somebody that you care about, because there are plenty of dads out there that I believe deserve encouragement, empowerment, and a little bit of enlightenment. This episode is important to me because it's personal. This is speaking to who I am as a man and who I became as a father. I want to talk specifically about how childhood shapes manhood and then how manhood then shapes fatherhood. But whenever there are gaps, whenever there's missing in construction moments, whether we're laying down a foundation of childhood, wherever the gaps are, they're going to reappear somewhere in your life. If you're a visual person out there, like this is childhood, right? This is manhood. You want to build manhood on top of childhood, and then above that, then you have fatherhood. But sometimes, like in my scenario, I had an underdeveloped childhood, then 19 years old, built fatherhood, and didn't experience the gap of manhood, what I should have learned as a man, and how to help support me as a father. I missed a lot in that space, that manhood space, but we're going to get into it. Childhood is where we're taught honesty, we're taught about our emotions, we're taught how to resolve conflict. I believe too, in childhood is when you learn whether or not your voice matters. And this isn't about talking about bad parenting, bad history. This is talking about foundations. Not just talking about foundations, but understanding these foundations. And kind of like I was saying, I didn't have like this solid childhood. I wouldn't say it was a solid childhood. I was raised by mainly my dad. He did the things that he knew to do as a man. He was there, he provided. I respect that 100%. Now, keep in mind, as my one caregiver, he's supposed to help model these skills of developing conflict resolution. He definitely modeled being responsible, but there was a lot that wasn't developed. When these skills are missing, you don't realize that they're missing. You just grow up without them. I think the most significant thing that I was taught and that I was modeled was that a father in their child's life, there was never an option to leave. There was never an option to go. You remember when I was telling you about the gaps? Well, what isn't developed or what isn't modeled or what isn't learned, it doesn't disappear. It waits. What I mean by that is if you never learn patience, that gap, that experience, that skill, it waits. It's going to show up in frustration. It's going to show up in abandonment. Yeah, I became a father at 19. There was a lot going on. I was taught to be responsible. So from my perception and then from the actual reality, I was not absent from my oldest son's life. This is from 0 to 18. Dad, me, I just knew to be there. I knew no matter how frustrating the situation was, I was going to be there. Part of the challenges too is if you don't see or witness an adult regulating their own emotions. You know, that's a skill that you don't have, and that's a skill that you don't even realize that you're going without. So what happened and what that looked like? Well, I was reactive and not reflective. I was quick to respond and I was slow to wait on anything. An honest consequence of a lot of that was I hurt a lot of people emotionally. I want to point out too, there is a stark difference between impact and intent. A man can be responsible with all the things, but he can definitely be underdeveloped emotionally. And I believe fatherhood has a way of revealing all the things that never were developed or were missing during manhood, especially early manhood. And even though it was years later, I had more kids, I started to see patterns. I started to see the same frustration response. Have you ever had that moment where you just know what you want to do and what feels natural to do is just programmed, but then you have to resist doing it? That showed up a whole lot. That still shows up today. You know, it ends up being the same triggers. It ends up being the same reactions. It was the exact same gaps. And it was all from my childhood. And I realized something too. Kids just don't hear what you say. They feel how you show up. Like they feel when you're frustrated. They feel when you're upset. They feel when you're patient. And see, that's when the awareness hit. I had to unlearn in order to lead differently. I had to move from reacting to responding. Add a go away from surviving to understanding, and that's a longer process. We can't change our childhood, but we can rebuild our manhood. And when you do that, that's when you change your fatherhood. Learning patience in life later is still learning patience. Learning how to listen is still powerful. Repairing relationships still matters. This is what Dad Sharpens Dad is all about. Men sharpening men, dads sharpening dads. Not through shame, but through awareness. Now, if childhood is the foundation, manhood is the structure, and fatherhood is the legacy. We owe it 100% to our kids to strengthen what we weren't given. If this episode resonates with you, you're not alone. And truthfully, if you're willing to reflect on your own foundations, then that's what it takes to begin to grow. This is Dad Sharpens Dad. Thank you so much for watching.